Okay. Hi, everybody. For some reason, my live stream wasn't working there. So hopefully now it is. Um, don't see that anybody else is in the room, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Um, trying to think of any general announcements that I need to make. Um, papers that were handed in on time were graded. Um, people who got extra points, the extra points were added on there. The only way I could really do it fairly was to give like half a point for each question that was answered right. Again, because the grade inflation would have been so huge that the grade you would have ended up getting on the paper wouldn't have been, really close to what the paper was. Because again, with two people, vying for extra credit, you're obviously going to get very high amounts. So I did what I could to be fair. I mean, heck, both people who were in here and did extra credit still ended up getting like probably between 8 and 10 points each. So you almost got a letter grade for just for being in here and answering those questions, which I think is pretty pretty generous on the whole shot. But you guys, and this is not, I don't want this to be taken as bashing anybody who hasn't been in attendance, because I know some people can't. But you guys have been here. You clearly have been doing the work, and I think you deserve to be rewarded for that. I mean, obviously, right now is a time when anybody who wants to could be just, pardon my phrase, sitting with their thumb up their butt, doing nothing, and just saying, well, I'm going to go ahead and get my D in Dr. Root's class, and I'm going to take an S, and then I'll just take the class again later and get a better grade. I mean, I'm sure you guys got the email about what the grade change policy is going to end up being. Let me close my door real quick. My wife is getting ready to make her lunch. My wife tends to be very noisy when she prepares food. Yeah, I'm sure you guys got the email about the grade change. These are just some real quick things I want to go over with you all. Pretty much anybody who hasn't gotten a hold of me yet in the class regarding any sort of connectivity problems they're having, my assumption is that they've just kind of phoned it in, especially if they haven't turned anything in. Some people really haven't reached out to me, but they have turned stuff in. That's a little different. But as far as people who haven't turned anything in and they haven't really contacted me despite repeated attempts, pardon me, my assumption is they've phoned it in, which means at the end of the semester, if they end up with an F, they have the opportunity to call that a U. And what that means is it doesn't affect their grade point average. And if they're an English major or English ed, which most of you are, you'd have to take class again. Okay. That's all that means. If you get an A through a D, what that means basically is that you get to choose whether or not your grade is numeric or whether you get an S. All an S means is just that you satisfactorily completed the course. My honest input to you would be, unless you get a D, take the letter grade. Okay. Like, I mean, if you end up with a D in the class, take an S. Okay. Take an S. Otherwise, A, B, or C, I would take the letter grade. Okay. Just my opinion. I think most of you guys who are doing the work, I think you're probably going to end up, better than a C anyway. So I don't think you have much to worry about. But I wanted to take a minute to explain that because I wasn't sure if that had circulated to students yet or if that was just to faculty. But they had been talking to us about that for like a couple of weeks now. And I think just like maybe a day or two ago, they finally made a decision about what they were going to do. I'm not going to tell you where I stand on it. Frankly, I have an opinion on it. Some of you who know me better probably know what my opinion is, but it is what it is. It's a mandate. So I can't do anything about it. It is what it is. If you, I'm not sure you guys can actually see the titles of what I call each of these lectures before I post them, or if you can see them when you actually join in the lecture. But what I sort of titled this one is Conrad, racist or man of his times. And the reason I want us to kind of think about that as like a starting point is obviously, as I told you last lecture, Friday, we're not having a lecture because Friday is Good Friday. And particularly for those people who may be more religiously minded, that's an important day for them. So I don't want to hold a lecture during a period where people may be, practicing their faith or concentrating on it. By the way, let me say one other thing too. My safe bet is that Nzinga and Belrica are in here. One thing, you guys, I want you to know, when I look at my screen here, it tells me how many people are in the room, but there's no way for me to know who it is. So if you would just type something like here, like, hold on, sorry. That way I at least know who all is in the room and I can give you attendance. Because what I've been doing so far is kind of mixing attendance with assignments. And if we don't have an assignment, it's harder for me to do attendance and know who actually was here and who wasn't. So if you could just do that for me. Okay, this is who I figured was in here. The usual suspects. Okay. And Nzinga, I'm going to assume you're the third one because it doesn't count me, I don't think. At least it usually says 0 when it's just me. So at any rate, going back to the point I was making about Conrad, Dr. Wong and I have had conversations about Conrad, and one of the things that she has always sort of verbalized to me is that her belief is just that Conrad was a man of his times. And while I definitely understand that argument, I wanted to make sure I included readings in this. And this is why I talked about us not having a lecture on Friday. I believe over the weekend, what I would have had you reading was an article by Chinua Achebe, who is, if I recall, he's Nigerian, a Nigerian author who really kind of took Conrad to task about being racist in his writings and about how he believed it was more than just using racial epithets, like obviously I'm not going to use the words, but what I mean is it's one thing to write a book or to have a movie where you use racial epithets and they're being used either because it's cultural or they're being used out of anger. It's another one to take a race, well, I should say an ethnicity, because we all know now there's only one race, that's the human race, to take an ethnic group and make an entire ethnic group look a certain way. And I think when you read Achebe, which I definitely want you to read, the link is in your syllabus. It's not a terribly long essay. I actually had to read and do a presentation on it when I was in grad school, when I was at Florida State, and I'll get to that in a moment. It's quite different when you have slight moments of tension where, let's think about, for example, King Solomon's Mines. Okay, King Solomon's Mines, obviously the like Umbopa originally in there is depicted as being kind of sneaky, kind of crafty. And you got to think that's probably Quatermain's sort of, I don't want to call it street smarts, but he's more worldly than those other guys that he's with. He's been around. And presumably his experience in dealing with people in Africa, natives, has led him to believe, this guy seems sneaky to me. And I'm not excusing that and saying it's not a racist notion. What I'm saying is I think you're supposed to think that has something to do with it. But where I'm going with this is there's a couple times in the narrative, where Quatermain slips and he uses a racial slur. Okay, those are small moments. And I'm not sure they really define the narrative or Quartermain's character. Because here's the thing about Quartermain's character. I don't doubt that, and we talked about this in class, Dr. Wong probably would argue that, comparatively, H. Rider Haggard, the writer, and the character of Alan Quartermain are probably just sort of reflecting the view of the time in which they lived. It's probably true. I mean, again, that's probably true. But I would say one big difference between Haggard, Quartermain, Conrad, and Marlowe. Okay, Conrad wrote Heart of Darkness. Marlowe is his main character. Is that I don't think there is the almost what I would call, I don't want to call it inbred, maybe inborn is better, or embedded maybe is a better word. If you read Heart of Darkness or read even what I asked you to read for today, there almost seems to be like an embedded animosity toward these African characters from the point of the narrator, like almost like, they're beneath him. And I think when you read Haggard, I'm not sure we get the same sense of that, if that makes sense. And of course, they're two very different works, but they're both works that involve, sort of colonial or imperial practice, which is going into a native country and exploiting it, whether it's exploiting it for goods, exploiting the people there, whatever it would be. Okay. We know that one crossover, at least between the two, is, and I'm going to ask you this question: what did Alan Quartermain do for a living before he went on this journey with Captain Good and Sir Curtis? What did he do for a living? Excellent. And not only, I was worried you were just going to say he was a hunter. He was an elephant hunter. Okay. Have you all gotten to the part in, and again, I'm looking over here at my laptop. That's where my notes are. Have you gotten to the part in Heart of Darkness where you figured out exactly why Marlowe is going there? Like, what is going on in the Congo already before he gets there? Why is he going there? And Tanika, just a message to you. I know that when I had you fill out a survey the first day of class, you said, I want to be able to watch more movies. Well, of course, now that's been taken away from us. I was actually going to have us watch a movie, Apocalypse Now, which is basically a sort of, I always call them a recapitulation is the word I used. There's another word for it. It's not coming into my head right now. It's not going to come to me. When someone takes a play and they modernize it. Anyway, we were going to watch that, but what can I do? So sorry, you didn't get your wish, but it was in the syllabus. So I wasn't lying. It was there. So anyway, okay, maybe you didn't get to that part of the of Conrad's work yet. Basically what has happened is there's a trading post that has been set up there, and it is where they are basically they're gathering all the ivory that they've been getting, and that's where they give it to the people to put on the ship, the boats, to bring it back to England or wherever countries the people are coming from who are buying the ivory. So my point is there's an overlap there. Okay. Alan Quartermain is a big game hunter who hunts elephants and gets the ivory. Okay. But this is a much bigger, a much larger scale production. This is like a company. Okay. Like a trading company. And what they've done is they've set up an outpost in the Congo, and they kill the elephants. Obviously they take the tusks, and then they go back and they sell them in large quantity. Okay. It would be like, think about, and this is a weird analogy. I'm not encouraging it. It popped into my head. Think about somebody who is like a drug dealer who's just one guy. Okay. Then think about a drug dealer who's part of like a syndicate. Okay. Well, what I'm saying is one guy can only produce and sell so much drugs, but a guy who's in a big syndicate, he can, that syndicate can cover a lot of ground. Okay. What I'm saying is that's sort of the difference between like a Quartermain and this company. Quartermain can only do so much as a big game hunter on his own. I mean, how many elephants can he kill by himself and go and cut off the tusks and do everything on his own? Probably a modest amount. But if you have, let's say 50 guys who are all skilled hunters like Quartermain who are going out to kill elephants, then you can kill a lot more of them and get a lot more ivory. Okay, so that's what's going on. That's why Marlowe in this book has been dispatched to go and find the guy who is running this whole outfit, Kurtz, because Kurtz has gone nuts and he's a danger to the company. And so that's why Marlowe kind of has to go retrieve him. At least that's the plan. Okay. I'm not sure. I don't think I gave you the whole book to read for this class. I think I split it up. Next class on Monday, you will have read it all. And ideally you will have read Achebe's essay. And I think I even have you reading another one. I don't know if it's over the weekend or if it's for the class after that, by a guy named Hunt Hawkins. And the reason I want you to read the one by Hunt Hawkins is very simple. When I was at Florida State, Hunt Hawkins ran the graduate department I was in. When I had to do a presentation on Chinua Achebe's theory of Heart of Darkness, I went and talked to Hunt Hawkins because Hunt Hawkins had written a rebuttal to Achebe, telling Achebe that he was wrong about Heart of Darkness. And I think Hunt Hawkins, and again, I'm just kind of, throwing a piece of gum at the wall here. I don't know, because I never had Hunt for a teacher or anything, and I didn't have any discussion with him. He just put the article in my mailbox. He had written an article, and I think he had more of the view of that, like it was just basically that, that Conrad was just writing as any white English guy would have in 1900. And I think that Achebe's point again was that, okay, fair enough. But the problem again is not the language he uses, it's the images. It's the images of these Africans as basically being like subhuman. He used the word anthropomorphic. I'll type that word out for those of you who. Okay, hold on. My eyes are getting so bad. There we go. Sorry, I couldn't to type that one. That's a long word. That was his problem, was that the images of Africans in the book, he felt they were anthropomorphic. Okay. And like I said, you can look that one up. You'll remember it that way. And that also is a word that's probably going to be on your final exam, just so you know, which I sent an email out about your final exam probably about half an hour ago. So at any rate, why I wanted to bring up the article written by Hunt Hawkins was that when I had to write, or when I had to, I went to, or I shouldn't even say I went to him. I emailed him. I emailed Hunt Hawkins because I knew that he had written some criticism on Achebe's criticism. And then what was funny was when I went into the mailroom, I was at Florida State then. When I went into the mailroom and I got the article that Hunt Hawkins had put in my mailbox, he had attached with it a letter that Achebe had written to him. And it was a letter. And I don't think you can find that online. I think that was just, he actually wrote Hunt Hawkins a letter, like a personal letter, not like a literary criticism thing, but like he wrote a letter to him and basically told him like, yeah, you know, I appreciate your point of view, but you're still wrong. Here's why you're wrong. I wish I had kept it. I'm pretty sure it either got lost when I moved or I threw it away when I was done with it. But at any rate, I'm not sure that's published anywhere. That I think that may have been just something that he wrote directly to Hunt Hawkins. But anyway, where Hunt Hawkins is now, I don't know. Last I heard, he was the chair of the English department at the University of Central Florida or South Florida. I don't know if he's still active or not. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about him in years. But my point is okay. So one of the things I want us to think about when we read is kind of like what we looked at when we read King Solomon's Mines. Is Marlowe, who is the narrator, okay, is he really is he a racist figure? And if he's a racist figure, does he represent a racist author? Or is he just sort of, I would tend to use the word a victim. I think not so much a man of his time, but a victim of his times. If that makes sense. And why I think that's important is also for one other reason. And I know I've mentioned this before in class several times, even in 231, I mentioned it. If Majesty was here right now, she would be ready to like reach through the computer screen and choke me. Okay. See my choke hand. This story, and this is definitely something that's going to be on your final. I promise you, as sure as I'm sitting here right now, if I'm alive, if I stay healthy and healthy enough to make this final exam for you, I can, as sure as I'm wearing a yellow shirt right now, this is going to come up on your final exam. We've talked about it before. We've read works that are this way before. What's a frame narrative? And I always use Majesty as an example because, my God, she hated those frame narratives. Canterbury Tales, To Robin the Ancient Mariner, To Heart of Darkness. Oh, and Frankenstein, I think they read in that class, in their 232. She hated the frame narrative. I've never seen somebody hate a frame narrative so much. Good, Belrica. And you know what? I love the way you put that. It's probably better than I would have worded it. It's a story that is a story within a story. The best example that I could give you, and you can find it on YouTube, if it was more easy for me to switch over my cameras, I actually have, I know you can't see my hand here, I actually have an external camera right here that I use with my 102 students because I'm filming stuff to show them how to write. I'm going to actually move my screen a little bit so that I can show them how to write. So a lot of times I have this camera right here focused on stuff. So I'm typing and showing them how to write. You all don't need that. Okay, so I don't use the external camera with you guys. But where I'm going with this is, if I was going to, I would go on YouTube and I would see if I could find an example of, and I'm typing it in here, The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride is like the perfect example of a very accessible, easy movie that you could watch in probably 90 minutes. That is a perfect example of a frame narrative. I mean, it is to a T. It's a frame narrative. Okay. Now, that's not to say there aren't other movies out there that are, but that is like, I mean, a perfect example of one that you could just turn it on, and it's really entertaining too. I mean, it's got Andre the Giant in it. Come on. I mean, Andre the Giant. Okay, but yeah, it's and it's kind of like a fairy tale. So, you know, like I would seriously, like, if you guys have like Netflix or something like that and you want to kill an hour and a half because we're all stuck inside, especially now, apparently, like, we're not supposed to leave our homes unless it's like a life and death matter. I would take a minute and watch it if you can. It's probably on Netflix. You can probably find it. And if you have, or if you have Amazon Prime, you can probably find it on there. I mean, it's a really well-known movie. But at any rate, I digress. The point about this is, if you think back where we looked at Rime of the Ancient Mariner, okay? So really quickly, just to test your memories, because that's going to be on your midterm, just to test your, I'm pretty sure it's going to be on your midterm, just to test your, I'm sorry, on your final, just to test your mettle here. Who is actually narrating the Rime of the Ancient Mariner? Who's actually telling the story? Excellent. Excellent. I thought I was going to trick you. I thought I had you set up. It's the wedding guest. Because what the wedding guest is doing is he's telling you, this is what I was told. Good, Tanika. Excellent. This, I'll even write it out because I know you have connection problems, Tanika. Good. The wedding guest is telling you what this old man has said. Okay. It's not, it basically what it almost is, if you want to think about it this way, essentially, I know that sounds weird. You're getting it third hand almost. And I know you're going to think, how's third hand? Well, because someone told a guy a story who's telling it to you. That's not actually second hand. Second hand would be me telling you something I did. That's second hand. Hey, guess what I did yesterday? I went outside and I chopped down a bunch of brush in my backyard because I had to get out of my house because I was going nuts. That's a secondhand story. If my wife told me that she had gone outside to cut brush because she was going crazy, and then I told you, my wife told me that she had gone outside to cut brush because she was going crazy, you're getting it third hand. Okay? So that's sort of the thing about a frame narrative, is you're almost really actually getting it third hand. Okay? Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is Heart of Darkness is a frame narrative. Okay? Heart of Darkness is you're getting Marlowe's story, but it's being I'm trying to think here. Okay, let me go to my notes here, and I posted these on Moodle for you because I think that the notes that came from this movie, and again, you wouldn't have been able to see it anyway because you guys aren't on campus. But I had a student a couple semesters ago, and I don't know if I told you all this or not. It really, it made me mad, but I couldn't really be mad at the student. I don't think she meant to, do it, but I think she was just being careless. Um, the DVDs were part of a set, and they were in like the real thin cases because they fit inside like a larger set, and those cases are real slim. And I think whenever she went to take the disc out, I think she just pulled it out and it split the DVD. Well, the reason why I was really aggravated was, one, I think it's a good DVD and I used it to teach with, and two, it was part of like the set is like a $200 set. They're still on Amazon. It's like $200, and my mom had bought them for me. And to this girl's credit, she did offer to pay for it, but I couldn't do that. I just told her, to be more careful with people's things next time. I know people look at like a college teacher and think you guys have it made. You get paid a lot of money. Not so much. I mean, I didn't have $200 to go buy another, set of DVDs with. So basically that DVD died. But I again, I wasn't going to ask a college kid to pay me the money for it, and it just didn't seem right. But what I'm getting at is, so basically, one of the things that I think this writer talks about, or this lecturer, it was actually a guy lecturing. He was like a college professor. One of the things I thought was interesting was he talked about how the crisis of storytelling is really, I think, a pivotal issue with this work. Basically, what this, again, I'm not going to take credit for thoughts that aren't mine. I just don't remember the name of the guy who gave the lecture because I don't have the DVD anymore. So I don't remember his name. The author believes his language stops working as he moves through the narrative. Like, what it means is almost like the way he compartmentalizes things and sort of articulates them. It's almost like he feels as if the narrative progresses forward, his language becomes less and less effective or less and less precise. And arguably one of the reasons that happens is because he encounters this journal that Kurtz has kept. Did you guys, let me ask this question. Did you, a simple yes or no, did you get to the point in the story where Marlowe finds Kurtz's journal? Because if you didn't, I don't want to give that part away. Because again, I'm not sure how far I asked you to read on the syllabus for today. I've been reading freshman stuff. Okay, then I'm not going to give it away to you. That's in the next part. I will say, I think largely that author, that teacher's theory rests on one idea. I think one, well, maybe not just one, but I think one of the factors is he discovers Kurtz's journal and he realizes how brilliant Kurtz actually is. Disturbing, yes. Again, I'm not going to tell you what's in there. Disturbing, yes, but nonetheless brilliant. Okay, so keep your eye out for that part. Okay, thank you for answering me there, by the way, too. It helps me keep track of where you guys are in the book, because I don't, novels, and this is a short one, but they're hard to teach because I have to break them apart, and so I don't want to give away stuff to you because that cheapens your experience in reading it. Again, I'm just going to kind of move on some key points. Let me see here. Again, I think this is another good example of, this is a work that's going to kind of round out the Victorian era. Okay, I mean, what I mean is, I think 1899 is when the book was written. 1901, I think, was when it was published, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was 1900, but I believe it was written a year or two before it actually got published. And one of the reasons for that, I'm going off my memory here, Conrad was really meticulous. one of the things also interesting about him as an individual was ever since he was a kid, he was obsessed with cartography. I'll put that word in here. Does anybody know off the top of their head what cartography is? I know your computers, you could probably type it in. It would help you remember it. And this is just another thing that could be an extra credit question because it factors in to the book. I probably wouldn't make this a question on your final, but it might be an extra credit question on your final. Yeah, good. Belrica, basically, he was fascinated with maps. Apparently, he was like one of those people who, like when you're a kid and you spin a globe and you stop it with your finger and you're like, hey, that's where I'm going to live one day. And you're like, you know nothing about Cuba. And you're like, that's where I'm going to live. And then you realize Cuba is a pretty not the best place to live. And then you change your mind. You go, I don't think I want to live there. Well, that's sort of like the way he was. He was just fascinated by maps. And you see that in this story. You also should know, that Marlowe, Conrad, like H. Rider Haggard, he did travel. He did travel on boats and things around. I don't want to say around the world, but to other countries. So again, we don't want to look at this necessarily as being like a book by somebody who's what we would call like a poetaster. The word a poetaster means somebody who's doesn't really know much about anything. Like what I'm getting at is maybe the depictions that he puts in there are racist. Maybe they're highly exaggerated. Okay. But what I'm getting at is you shouldn't think they would be that way just because of something he would have read or something he would have heard in England. Like it would have been him doing that based on whatever it was he thought he saw when he went to places. Okay. Like it's because he did go to Africa. And now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to tell you that the way he depicts what he saw there is accurate. What I'm saying is maybe in his mind, it was. Okay. Again, like I tell you guys all the time in our class, perception is reality. It's sort of like if I use this example the other day, it's sort of like my perception of this virus is it's bad. Undeniably, it's bad. But is it as bad as the media is making it out to be? All you have to do is go online and look at the numbers of people who have survived having this compared to the number of people who have died from it. And you can see that, it's not quite what the media is presenting it to be. Again, is it bad? Yes. Anytime there's loss of life, it's bad. I'm not cheapening that. What I'm saying is that the media has basically made the coronavirus look like the plague. Okay, like go back and read about the plague. If you want to read about a disease that was wiping people out, read about the plague in England, the Black Plague, the one that killed about 2/3 of the people in probably like a month. Okay, like I'm just making a point. It's not there yet. Okay, let's hope it doesn't get there. But my point is that perception is my perception is my reality of it. My perception is that the media it likes to operate with doom and gloom. They want to make everybody out there terrified to just think about living their lives anywhere but in their house right now. Okay. Now, that may be the smart thing to do to keep from getting sick. I'm not arguing that. What I am saying is I highly doubt that if you go out in public and you wear a face mask and you wear gloves, I highly doubt you're going to get sick. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, But what I mean is if you're taking precautions and you get home and you wash your hands and you take whatever clothes you're wearing off and you wash them, the chances of you getting this, I really don't think are nearly as high as people are making it out to be. Because I've gone out several times and knock on wood, I haven't had an issue. Okay, what I'm saying is, I think if you're probably not at risk, you're probably not in terrible danger of going out and getting this unless somebody comes up and they're coughing on you or something. My point is, though, again, not to go off track, that's my perception of it. Whether that's reality or not, I don't know, but that's my perception of it. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is, we may look at Joseph Conrad as being a man of his times. We may look at him as being a racist, or maybe racism was just part of the times he lived in. But the point I'm making is, I'm not sure he consciously wrote this book with the idea of going, I'm going to depict these Africans in a way that's going to dehumanize them. I think maybe in his mind, that was just what he saw, or maybe what he thought he saw. Because you have to remember, like, a lot of this, that he's writing on is based on like memory. And as I've talked about in class too, our memories are never really accurate. I mean, they're not 100% accurate ever. Okay. So, the reason I'm going through that kind of long thing about perception being reality is this is coming in right at the end of the Victorian era, where appearances were everything. Think about Oscar Wilde. Okay. That idea that, there's really no such thing as bad publicity. If people are talking about you, it's good. The way you appear to others is almost probably more important than the way you appear to yourself. Because we all present some kind of image to people. Okay? We all do. And so there's a part on this outline I gave you where I even think about Oscar Wilde. One of the things this novel also deals with that's dangerous is what we never know is what would happen if we were found out. Well, Oscar Wilde found out, like, pardon me repeating myself there. Oscar Wilde found out what happens when you get found out. And look at what his life became. Jail, death. He got found out. Now, I'm not saying that was fair. I'm not saying the way the English government did him over was fair. It wasn't. I mean, and again, like I told you guys, one of the things I think we have in our world today that we can look at as a positive, even though there are so many things out there that's a negative, is that though our judicial system is far from perfect, the kind of thing they nailed Oscar Wilde for and how they nailed him today, I don't think that would ever have held up. I think if Oscar Wilde, got tried for that today, I really don't think I doubt he would have been found guilty. And two, I don't think he would have been sent to jail, even if they found him guilty. They'd have fined him. They'd have put him on probation. They'd have put him on house arrest. They'd have given him a misdemeanor. I really don't think it would have been a jail-worthy offense, what he did. Even if he did it. Again, like, I think that's still up in the air. Like, but my point is Wilde found out what happens when you get found out. But think about yourself. What would happen if somebody found you out? And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what do you mean, Dr. Root? Okay. Like, for example, let's say like I'll give a great example and then I'll try my best to wrap up because I have a conference with another student at 1:00. Think about what would happen if you lost your cell phone. Just think about for 1 second. What would happen if you lost your cell phone? Now, somebody who's in the room, I know there's at least one other person in here now. Maybe it is counting me as a person. I don't know. Anyway, what would be the first emotion you would feel if you lost your cell phone? Tanika, I love it. Okay, I would cry. Why? And let's not make this about the money of it. Let's not make it about it's an expensive phone. Why would that be your response? And Belrica, if you're still in the room, how would you feel? Because I'm working to something here, believe it or not. Okay, a part of my life, good. Okay, a part of my life is in my phone. Here's the word I would use. Stupid computer. This new laptop always wants to install a bunch of stuff. That's what you keep hearing. And by intimate details that I typed in there, I don't necessarily mean anything perverted. That's not what I mean. Our phones are almost like I said, I'm working to something here. I know sometimes you guys probably think, I'm not necessarily following. I'm working to something here. All of our phones have intimate details in them. And again, I don't want you guys walking away going, "Ooh, Dr. Root was talking about some perverted stuff." That's not what I mean. Okay, maybe for some people they do. I don't know. But what I mean is, think about like whether it's your pictures or your text messages. Okay, unless you go around showing every single person everything that's in your phone, guess what it is? What's the word we would use for it? Think about what a diary is supposed to be. A real diary. Thank you. Tanika, you get the clap. You get the clap there. Private. A lot of what we have on our phones is private. It's meant to be private. So for a lot of us, if we lost our phones, here's honestly what I think our response would be. Yeah, you guys would be sad. But here's another thing that I think you might be too. And this is not accusing anybody of anything, but don't you think you'd be panicked? Because I'm speaking for myself here. I would be panicked because there's stuff on there like, I mean, even like, for example, okay, just for example, like my PayPal app on my phone. If I have my Wells Fargo app on my phone, if I have Apple Pay on my phone, if I have anything in there that has my address on it, well, guess what? Someone now has. Essentially. Yes, Tanika. They have all your information, which means basically they have your identity. They have enough to be you. In other words, what I'm saying is they'd have enough on there to basically have you figured out. And especially if they can hack into your messages, all of a sudden they have access to friends, family, information, things that they otherwise would not have access to. And all of a sudden, someone's walking around with your phone and they have it. That's why, for me, my first response would be panic. I wouldn't be sad because I really don't like cell phones. So the phone itself is not an issue to me. it would be what's in it that would be a concern to me. It wouldn't be the phone itself. Honestly, if I didn't have to use a cell phone, I would have no qualms right now going out in my garage, taking my sledgehammer and smashing that phone. Literally, I wouldn't. I know you guys are different. You guys are of a different generation than me, but I would have no problem smashing that cell phone, especially if I could get my money back for it. But you have to have one. You just do. Okay. Well, here's where I'm going with this, and this is where I'm going to wrap up. The second part of the question, and there's actually a 3-part to it. What happens if everything is permitted, and what would we discover about ourselves? Well, think about that. Think about what would happen if you all of a sudden found yourself in a place where anything and everything goes. Would you be a moral person if you lived in a world where everything goes? See, what I'm getting at is we have laws and stuff. Like right now, even there's a law. Now, I don't think it's really being enforced. There's a law that you're not supposed to leave your house unless you have a absolutely pressing reason to go somewhere. Now, again, I don't know that how firmly that's being enforced. I doubt it's being very firmly enforced, but it's still a mandate. Okay. What I'm saying is, think about if every single person said, you know what? F that mandate. I'm going out. I'm going to go do what I want to do. Think about if everybody you knew decided they were going to break the law all of a sudden. Well, you know what that would be? It would be anarchy. And I think that's what this guy who was giving the lecture was trying to say about where Marlowe and Kurtz are. It's anarchy. There's no law there. It's basically, it's almost like a banana republic. There's sort of one guy who's laying down the rules that everybody else is supposed to follow, and that's Kurtz. And again, you'll get to that. But where I'm going is, what happens when you end up in a place, and this is another term you can look up to figure out where it comes from. What happens when it's Thunderdome everywhere, where you can just go in and just do what you want to do and never have to face any sanctions for it? Would you still be a good person? Would you be the same person you are when you know that you can't get away with doing bad things? Would you still be that good person? Or would you let the environment make you something else? And that's where I would end the lecture. I would argue that the title Heart of Darkness sometimes I think also gets a bum rap, because I don't think Conrad was titling it Heart of Darkness referring to Africa as being the dark continent. I don't personally think the title has anything to do with that. I think what the title has everything to do with is that what would happen if you found yourself in a place where you could basically get away with anything you wanted to do? Wouldn't that be a dark place? Would you be going into a dark place within yourself? Wouldn't you? I mean, wouldn't most of us? Like, there have been times where, I wanted to go to the convenience store and buy a lottery ticket, but I didn't have $10. That doesn't mean I go back behind the counter and I steal a lottery ticket. But what if I could, is the question. What if I was allowed to do that and nothing would happen to me? Would I not go back behind that counter and get that lottery ticket? I don't know. I don't know if I would or I wouldn't. Okay, it's kind of like that old TV show where they had the hidden camera and they would show how people acted when they didn't know someone was watching them. Like people stealing bicycles and stuff off the side of the street. Would you be a good person if you knew you didn't have to be? Would you just be what you wanted to be? Kind of like Oscar Wilde. Would you just be what you wanted to be? And that's where I'm going to end my lecture, because I think that's probably whereabouts you're going to pick up for your next part of the reading. So for Monday, I do want you to have read the rest of Heart of Darkness, and I do want you to at least have read Achebe. I'm not sure I gave you the link to Hunt Hawkins' article. If I did, and I asked you to read it over the weekend, read it too, okay? But for sure, read Achebe and read Heart of Darkness, okay? So that's where I'm going to end my lecture. Thank you, guys. Again, be good, be safe, be conscientious, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. This is going to pass. remember one thing. Remember one thing. We're coming up on Easter weekend, okay? And miraculous things happened on Easter weekend a very, very long time ago. Miraculous things can still happen today, okay? Remember the quote, faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain. All we need is to have a little faith sometimes. So let's just stay the course, do what we're being asked to do, and we'll get through all this a lot faster. So with that being said, bless you guys. Thank you. Appreciate y'all. And I hope you got something from this. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Not on Friday, but on Monday.